talking on soil fertility and management. In it, I'll be looking at the meaning of soil fertility, characteristics of a fertile soil, and the management methods of soil fertility. Soil fertility is the capacity of the soil to supply adequate nutrients to crops. And let us hear from specialist Veronica Flex.
Soil fertility is the ability of soil to supply nutrients for plant growth. The soil is a storehouse of plant nutrients, stored in many forms, some very available to plants, some less so. The concept of soil fertility includes not only the quantity of nutrients the soil contains, but how well they are protected from leaching, how available they are, and how easily roots function. A beginning point for discussing soil fertility is to define the term plant nutrient. I'm Dr. DeBusk, and this video focuses on the essential elements, sources of nutrients, cation exchange capacity, and how.
The next one is characteristics of a fertile soil. Now, a fertile soil must have good cation exchange capacity. Then, it should also be black in color, also rich in organic matter, and also have a good granular structure. The next one I'm going to talk about are methods of soil fertility management. And the first is cover cropping. And cover cropping is a crop that is purposely meant to cover the soil against evaporation and splash of rainfall. The next one is bush fallow, which is actually practiced in shifting cultivation, and it's a practice whereby you leave a land uncultivated for a period of time. Here is a short story cartoon that is showing a story on shifting cultivation. Yeah.
Since the time of our ancestors, we have been planting crops, hunting, and doing gathering. We have always relied on the forest for everything, and have always protected it and nurtured it in return. When we do subsistence farming, we shift fields periodically. Let me tell you how we farm our crops. First, using our ancestral knowledge, we look at the surrounding trees and plants to tell us that the soil is fertile and ready for growing our crop. Then, we perform rituals to see if powerful spirits live in the area. If they do, then we farm somewhere else. We don't want to upset the spirits. Once we've chosen a small plot, we'll clear it all together with machetes. In March, we burn the dead plants. The nutrients in the ashes make the soil naturally fertile and help the harvest to be good. After the harvest, we leave the area for several years so the soil regenerates. The fields attract all kinds of birds and animals who benefit from the clearing. The forest that grows back will be as strong and healthy and will protect the land from erosion. Look at the forest around us. To you it looks like a wilderness, lush, green, and untouched. But this is our home. And it's like this because we've cared for it and managed it since the beginning of time. One day, governmental officials came and told us, "Your fires are polluting the air. You are destroying the forest and causing erosion." But this is not true. Our farming method is sustainable and less intrusive. They forced us to use the same plot of land permanently. But when we plant on the same piece of land over and over again, the soil gets exhausted, and ultimately the forest will never grow back. The following years, our harvest became poorer and poorer, till it was not enough to feed our families. The only way to survive now is to harvest more and more honey, rattan, and resin, and put more and more pressure on our forest. The ban on shifting cultivation means we cannot live sustainably in self-sufficiency anymore. All of this is done in the name of conservation, but in fact, we indigenous people are the best conservationists. Please, help us lift the ban and save our forest.
Here I have organic manure as well as types of organic manure that are waste products that are used in increasing the fertility of the soil. Now I have the compost manure, green manure, and the fine hair manure. Here I want to look at the process of compost making using the pit method especially. Now in the pit method we dug 4 pits, A, B, C, and D, And inside this pit, you have to place materials such as waste product from farm animals, especially that of poultry, goat and sheep. Then you add grasses and other human waste like kitchen waste. You add them, allow them to decompose. From 2 weeks, you change from pit A to B, from B to C and D, like I said before. From D, finally you are going to take them to the farm. But before then, you see a wood by my left hand side. That is known as a tester. That tester, once you raise it up and the wood is hot, you know that the decomposition process is actually working. Then if it's not, if you raise it up, it's cold, it's not hot, you know that it's not working. You start all the process all over again. Now this is good for people that may not want to spend much money buying fertilizers or chemical substances. These are just natural process of regaining the lost fertility of the soil. The next one is my inorganic manure, which is fertilizer. They are chemical substances that are actually added to the soil in order to increase the fertility of the soil. We have 2 types. The major one is compound fertilizer and a single fertilizer. A compound fertilizer supplies 2 or more minerals, while a single fertilizer supplies just a element, 1. Then I have the methods of application of fertilizer. Now we have the side placement. You put it by the side. Broadcasting, you just scatter them. Then I also have the ring method. You put it around the crop that you have planted. Then the top dressing, you put it at the top of your ridge or heap. Then also similarly, foliar method, you use water to apply fertilizer. Then the row method, you put it in between the rows. And now let us hear from Dr. Veronica Fles on fertilizer application. Here she talks.
Growers could apply a fertilizer that contains a single nutrient, which would mean a fertilization operation for each nutrient. It is often more convenient to use fertilizers that contain several nutrients. Such fertilizers are made by mixing several of the carriers, which stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in that order. Fertilizer containing only one element is called a single-grade fertilizer. Many fertilizers contain 2 or 3 nutrients and are called mixed fertilizers. Complete fertilizers have all 3 of the primary elements. Fertilizer grades never total 100%. For example, 10-10-10 fertilizer is 30% nutrient and 70% other ingredients. What are those other ingredients? Primarily, the remainder of the fertilizer is the weight of the other elements that are part of the carrier, such as hydrogen and oxygen. Nitrates are preferred for early spring planting of cool season crops. Ammonia is better for fall fertilization because less nitrogen will leach out of the soil before spring. Common methods include broadcasting and injection. Fertilizing before planting could also include incorporation of fertilizer into potting mixes before planting. While this is the main fertilization, economical way to fertilize before planting is by broadcasting. Machinery and sometimes aircraft is used to spread dry fertilizers evenly on the soil surface. Fluid fertilizers can also be sprayed on the soil. For phosphate and potash, the materials should then be plowed down or mixed into the soil before the crop is planted. Soil injection is also known as knifing or chiseling and can be used before crops are planted. Most typical. Fertilizing after planting allows for split applications and is the only way to fertilize perennial crops in the years after planting crops such as turf, orchards, or forages. Most post-plant fertilization focuses on renewing nitrogen during the growing season, which is the most efficient time to apply nitrogen to rapidly growing crops. Several methods are in common use. Top dressing is similar to broadcasting except that fertilizer is spread over a growing crop and is not mixed into the soil. Either dry or fluid fertilizers can be used. This method is used to feed grains, pasture, and lawns. Turf managers use these terms differently. Spreading fertilizer on established turf is called broadcasting, while spreading a thin layer of soil, compost, or other amendment over existing turf is top dressing. Side dressing is a way of making post-plant applications to row crops. Side dressing is done by fertilizing along the crop row. Commonly, this is done by knifing ammonia into the soil, dribbling fluids, or dropping solids. Side dressing is the most popular way to make split applications. It concentrates fertilizer near the roots. Corn rows, vegetable rows, nursery rows, and even orchards can be fertilized by side dressing. A third way to fertilize a growing crop is to inject fertilizer into irrigation water. Fertigation works best in sprinkler or drip irrigation, but can be used with surface irrigation. Drip is especially well adapted because low levels of fertilizer can be virtually spoon-fed to the root system. In fertigation, a device called an injector draws concentrated fertilizer efficiencies. Fertilizers alter soil chemistry in ways other than increasing nutrient content. Fertilizers, mainly nitrogen fertilizers, alter soil pH. Ammonium fertilizers depress soil pH by processes that release hydrogen when ammonium nitrogen is added to the soil.
Crop rotation is a practice whereby crops are planted in a definite order, in a sequential order, in a farming using a rotational system. Here we are going to hear from Dr. Saskia on what to do or what to have in a good crop rotational system. Let's hear
A good
him.
crop rotation can help to prevent crop damage by pests and diseases, while also increasing and maintaining soil health. Besides prevention of pests and diseases, it plays a major role in soil fertility and structure. Crop rotation is a planned order of growing specific crops on the same field. The succeeding crop belongs to a different family. In order to suppress soil-borne diseases and nematodes, a rotation can be kept very simple, but the more diverse, the more benefits can be utilized, under the precondition that the specific crops are used in the right sequence and ratio. To design an appropriate crop rotation, it is important to understand the underlying processes and to follow the right steps. Soil-borne diseases and nematodes require a susceptible host plant in order to survive and multiply. They can multiply in or on the infected susceptible host plant. After harvest, crop residues and dead plants will potentially contain huge amounts of pathogens and nematodes. With the decomposition of the crop residues and plants, they will be retained in the soil, thereby increasing the level of infestation in the soil. This increases the pressure on the next crop to the point that its cultivation is possibly not economically feasible anymore. This continuous cycle can be interrupted by growing a non-host crop that is not susceptible to the diseases and nematodes present in the soil. This action harnesses natural factors, such as starving of the pathogen or antagonism by beneficial soil microorganisms, meaning that the populations of the pathogens and nematodes will decline to the point that potentially susceptible crops can be grown successfully again in the same soil. A good crop rotation prevents pests and diseases reaching a population density in which they affect crop yield and quality, resulting in an economic loss for the farmer. It increases or preserves soil health and thus helps to maintain the profitability of the crop. First of all, a sound crop rotation is adapted to the local conditions. Apart from market opportunities and soil type, the infestation level of already present diseases and pests determines the rotation scheme. Determination of the soil infestation level by nematodes is relatively easy, and in many countries, public or private laboratories offer such services. In contrast, only a few of such methods exist for soil-borne fungal pathogens, for example, for verticillium. And this analysis is only available in a limited number of countries, known after each other to complement each.
Principles of crop rotational system. A good crop rotational system should follow some principles of guide. Now, crops that belong to the same group or family, like cereals, we have maize and rice here, should not follow each other. Similarly, they are also going to be affected by the same disease and pest. They should not follow each other. Instead, should be followed by a deep-rooted crop. Similarly, I have a deep-rooted crop here like yam and cassava. They should not also follow each other because they collect the nutrient from the same level of soil. Instead, it should be followed by maize. Then crops that are likely to also be consuming the same nutrient like nitrogen, or cereals consume the same nutrient, they should not follow each other. It should be followed by other crops. Now, I thank you for watching my video, and I hope to come with another interesting topic by next week. Thanks.